Welcome to Marriage Monday, everyone. It's great to be together, and tonight's a very special night because, Kevin, why is tonight so special?
Well, it's Marriage Monday, but it's also...
That's true.
It's 1 year. It's 1 year.
It's exactly 1 year to the day that we started Marriage Monday. So happy birthday, everybody. Happy one-year birthday.
You don't know whether you should be excited about marking this 1 year anniversary or not, but we call it... here's the reason we know for sure that it was 1 year ago. We were... we mark it with some very special COVID birthdays.
That's right.
And I understand all of you have had a COVID birthday because since we're 1 year, everybody's had their birthday. But these COVID birthdays that are special, these are a couple special people to us. 1 year ago, we started here on the stage, and we had with us our, ever encouraging tech friend, Chris Ramos. His wife's birthday was the night we started one year ago.
March 23rd.
He decided not to go celebrate his wife's birthday and potentially damage his marriage to come and talk and help you with your marriage. That was a year ago.
And also our friend, Savika's friend as well, Melissa Tetley's birthday is on March 23rd. So happy birthday, Melissa and Savika.
So we mark those
and happy anniversary of the COVID.
We mark those birthdays as the COVID birthdays that got this all started. It's not their fault, but we do wish them a very, very happy birthday.
Absolutely.
And to all of you who are with us, for those of you who've been with us now for what you'd call about a year, thank you so much for being with us. We really do appreciate it. For those of you who are asking yourself right now, a year, what is there left to talk about in marriages after a year? What possibly could you be? We all have learned how to have a great marriage. We all have a great marriage. There's no reason for us to be here. Well, here's what we've discovered in a year. Not everybody's got marriage figured out. Now, most of the people who were with us and who are no longer with us, maybe they've got it figured out. But for the loyal tribe, the loyal group that are always here, we salute you. Lisa and I are like that. We don't have marriage all figured out. We just keep working at it, right? Sharing it with you, and we think that's a good thing.
We've learned a lot about marriage in this last year.
We really have.
From doing this, so thank you.
Yep.
And the last episode we were together, we talked about marriage triggers and traps. We introduced the idea of marriage triggers and traps and how triggers are powerful just reactions that we have to things people say, maybe something that happens. We can even inside of ourselves think something that triggers us and really gets that fight, flight, freeze, the survival brain, the amygdala going off. We talked about that all last time we were together, so we won't rehash all of it. But there's many, many reasons that we have triggers. We're not going to go into all the ways that, where triggers come from, but it could be past hurts from relationships, insecurities. I'm a Myers-Briggs MBTI facilitator, instructor. I'd love to go into personalities and how they have a lot to do with triggers. And certainly you, from your 30 plus years of experience as a minister, there's lots of things that are behind our triggers, but we're going to talk about triggers in a real practical way tonight that's simple enough that you can take away from these episodes that we're doing together, something that will really change and help you to tackle the triggers in your marriage that are not healthy for you.
So here's what we're going to do tonight. Tonight's going to be a little bit, if it's all right with you, since we're 1 year into this, we've gone around the sun once and we're still in lockdown. Here's what we're going to do. Tonight's going to be a roll up your sleeves kind of discussion. It's not going to be too scary. It's not going to be too hard for you, but it is going to be, let's get to a little bit of work here. And as Lisa said, we're going to talk about things that trigger you. And the reason why we're talking about it is we'd like to say to you that most of our marriages, we have these little triggers and they cause problems within our marriages. Yes. So these kind of triggers and traps, these are the things that throw us off, right, with each other. They throw us off in our marriage. And so we just like to reference that great modern philosopher of our time, Mike Tyson. I want to pause there because some of the guys who weren't paying attention, they just heard the word Mike Tyson.
Mike Tyson, that was a trigger. It was a trigger.
Yeah, it's a good trigger though. Now they're actually paying attention.
And there are positive triggers, but that's a different story.
So Mike Tyson said this, and this is, I think, really applies to a lot of areas of our life, but it can apply to our marriage as well. But of course, in case you don't know who Mike Tyson is, really very fierce heavyweight champion at one time, and certainly very popular as well. But he kind of coined this phrase, and it's gone viral over the years, and it's quite simply this: everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. Isn't that true about your marriage? Yeah, you got this great plan, everything's going well, and then not saying that somebody actually punches somebody, that's not what we're talking about, but we all get punched, right? We all get triggered, and it happens just in a millisecond, doesn't just in a fraction of a second, and we don't even understand why. All of a sudden something punches us in life, and something hits us in life. We've got all kinds of phrases. Something twists us, or something freaks us out. There's all these phrases, right? And then it's off.
Yeah, we like to actually give our triggers, we give the reaction names like, I was bent out of shape, or that really set me off.
Set me off.
You know, I freaked out, or, you know.
Took the wind out of my sails.
Yes, you know, things that just really catch you up. So
everybody has a plan.
I think they know what we're talking about.
Until they get punched in the face. So, triggers and traps. Last episode, we talked with you guys about what triggers you. Wasn't that good? Some of the stuff that everybody shared
Oh
here.
my goodness, the viewers, you guys were so awesome. We read back the chat, and I was laughing my head off some of the things. And actually, another great explanation, I think Sherry Besla said that a trigger, you get triggered. Being triggered is like walking into a glass door that you didn't know was there, or a glass, window that you didn't know was there. And so again, just really catching you off guard. So,
and that's not funny, by the way. I've actually done that before. It's only funny to the people who are watching. It's
there were a whole bunch of funny things in the chat, but a lot of you gave us also just triggers, like someone eats your leftovers. Someone said that was a trigger.
That can trigger you, right? Misunderstandings is what you guys shared with us. You get triggered when you and your spouse, right? We're talking marriage, right? And there's that misunderstanding. It just throws you off, right?
Or like a sink full of dishes. You come into the kitchen, you expect it to be clean, and there's just a whole mess that you didn't expect to be there.
You shared with us last time that a trigger for you is not being listened to. Really kind of sets you off. It's a punch, so to speak, to the marriage when you feel like you're not being listened to. Yeah,
someone said that people talking, over them, their spouse talking over them, could be a real trigger.
Yep. Triggers can be sights, sounds, smells. Someone actually mentioned in our last episode that there's flowers, when they see flowers, or certain type of flowers reminds them of someone's passing, reminds them of a funeral. That can trigger you.
A certain tone of voice, their spouse using a certain tone of voice reminds them of something in their past that really triggers them. There's all kinds of...
Feeling like you've been rejected was something you guys shared as well.
Yeah, past hurts. Yeah, exactly. I think we list them all? There were so many. You guys were amazing. It was really good. So, I think that's great. So let's talk about your triggers. Tonight, we really want us to answer this question. What triggers you? What triggers you? If you could identify the triggers in your life, if you could figure out what traps you, and if you could be so, there's a fancy word, in psychology that they use, if you could be so integrated. In other words, if you could know yourself, if you could be self-aware enough to see and identify what really sets you off, that's half the battle. The beginning of the training starts with knowing what your triggers are. And so when you really get to know yourself and have the confidence to be able to own it and say, yeah, this is what happens to me when I encounter this.
Yep. So what we want to think a little bit about, or we'd like to ask you to join us and start thinking, even kind of personally, about what triggers you, what sets you off a little bit, and then start to ask this. So this is going to be the heavy lifting, or the pull up your sleeves kind of work that we're going to do even tonight. What would ask yourself this question: what would your marriage be like if you were in tune with what triggers you?
Yeah. Wow.
What would your marriage be like if you were in tune and aware with what triggers your spouse? Now, we're going to give you the caveat afterwards, so don't sit here and be defensive towards me right now and not hear what I'm saying. I'm saying, in that perfect world, what if you could actually figure these things out? What would your marriage be like if you were really in tune with your spouse's needs and your spouse's desires and your spouse's hurts? How much closer could you guys be? How much more productive would your conversations be? And that ultimate goal is a reason that we've got to talk about you knowing what your triggers are.
Amazing. And don't be fooled. We all have triggers. Don't think, I don't have any triggers.
I know a trigger in the last year: technology. Technology is a trigger.
Technology not working.
Where's Chris? Hey, Chris, are you being triggered tonight? Are we good with technology?
I'm being triggered.
You're being triggered even right now.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Is everything working? Yeah.
They can hear you.
They can,
Oh, okay.
They can hear us.
Okay, great.
So if you can't see us, you can hear
So
us.
we're going to talk about the fact, and also, yes, just back to everyone gets triggered. It's a survival mechanism that our brain has when it signals to us that there's some kind of danger or fear of something that we associate from the past that we don't like. And if you think, well, I really don't think I have triggers, because we have some wonderful sons-in-laws that live in our home, and we've asked them over and over again, what triggers you? And it's fun trying to figure out what triggers them, and we think we've got them figured out. But something Kevin and I were talking about is the fact that triggers all throughout your life, they're different. But if you think about teenagers, would you say teenagers are triggered easily? I mean, absolutely.
Seems like it.
It seems like they're very triggered. So it does seem to have something to do with insecurity, not knowing your place in the world. Maybe we're going to get more to that in a second. But also, we just think that even if you're feeling tonight like, I don't have any triggers, even over a length of time,
Who's thinking that?
the things that maybe you think are cute in your spouse now, just give 10, 20 years and they might become triggers.
Yeah,
so it's
till
a
you've been married
very
this long.
important thing to get to know yourself and to know what your triggers are.
So look, here's the goal before we jump into this. So we're just kind of setting this up right now, kind of appealing to your common sense, appealing to your better angels a little bit here. We're appealing honestly for you not to start off in a defensive posture. We want to start talking about you figuring out what your triggers are. And if you could actually look at them instead of just rushing right into this justification. And so
That's
the goal of all of this is maturity in your marriage. Whether you've been married for 15 minutes or you've been married for 15 years or 50 years, the goal in marriage is to act, well, integrated, right? Complete. And that has the connotation of maturity.
Yes.
So when you see, and if you could have the courage even to see what triggers you, when you see that, if you could tell yourself, look, this is an area of work that I have got to put in myself, rather than, and here's the problem with triggers, when they happen to us, they happen immediately, and we feel completely justified in that triggering. Remember last time we were together, Lisa and I talked about 3 T's. There's the trigger and the trouble and the training, 3 T's, trigger, trouble, and training. What we'd like to do is we'd like to take that training and switch it with the trouble. If you could do a little bit of training, when you get triggered and you've got a little bit of training, perhaps you don't get in as much trouble as you pass through this. So start thinking and start considering that if you could really understand what your triggers are and not simply feel like your reaction is justified every time. The reason I did this is because she did that. There are times, and if I can just say this, Lisa, and to all those who are listening, those of you who are with us, we're going to presuppose something. You're in relatively good marriages. Mm-hmm. You're still triggered. Everyone on the planet is. But you're in relatively good marriages, or you probably wouldn't be watching this or tuning in. If you find yourself in a marriage where you're triggered because you're completely unsafe, or you're triggered because there's some sort of abuse, what we need to do is pause right here and say, that's probably not the majority of you, but if that's you, you need to remedy your situation immediately. Mm-hmm. You need to reach out and get some professional help immediately, whatever that means. This is not a place for you to stay in. That being said, the majority, though, of us who are watching this, we get triggered in very significant areas. We're not going to belittle the fact that it's not significant, but we have got to be able to look and see that a lot of these triggers are in me. We feel like they're in them. But if you can actually have the courage to say, what are my triggers? In other words, understanding your triggers can be liberating for you. And understanding your triggers and traps can be liberating for your marriage. And understanding your triggers and traps and not denying them can bring really freedom to your relationship. If you completely deny them and say they're the other person's fault all the time, well, then there's going to be a certain amount of oppression and depression that covers your marriage, not where you want to be.
So true. It's great points. And I saw someone in the chat was saying that when they and their spouse are tired or hungry, they definitely trigger each other more easily, and that a Snickers bar helps them to not be so triggered. And that's true. There are circumstances, and that is good. It's all part of self-awareness and knowing, what triggers us. But we're just going to really go to the place of what your body does which being tired, hungry, your body's doing something.
Tell me what happens when I'm triggered.
Because
what's going on?
Because we want you tonight to identify some triggers, or this week, figure out some of the triggers that you can work on. It's your homework. That's right. And so the things that happen in your body when you're triggered are your heart rate goes up, your blood pressure goes up. You might blush. People blush when they're triggered. You can feel your pulse. Just all kinds of those are clues for you for sure that you're being triggered, and those are things that are negative hormones or chemicals flooding your body at that point, because the fight, flight, freeze wants you to run away from the bear or the fire or whatever. But your spouse is not going to be that in that situation. That's an overreaction, because your spouse just whatever they did or said. You don't want those bodily negative chemicals going through your body all the time, because that's not good for you. And so again, tonight's going to help you, because triggers, overreactions are not healthy. You may feel like they're healthy because it helps your spouse really understands how upset you are, but it doesn't help. It doesn't help them, doesn't help you.
I only wish that when we get triggered that we actually have the wherewithal and we take the time to think, I'm going to react now to help my spouse. But that's never the way it is. Triggers are like right? A trigger.
Yes.
Click, explosion.
It's true.
That's how much time it actually takes. So let's not flatter ourselves that we're such deep thinkers that I'm going to react now to teach her a lesson. That's not the way it works. Just bam. It happens just like that.
As someone who's more easily triggered than you are, I can tell you though that after the bang, we keep it going because we think we're getting somewhere to let our spouse know, and it doesn't help.
Our triggers aren't single shot, right? They're explosions that fire multiple rounds at our spouse, and that's very deadly. So Lisa's talking about what happens to us physically. So what creates that physical reaction a lot of times? Remember, we all know this, that triggers are in and of themselves not wrong, because there was a time in history, or even a time now, where you need to be triggered. If your home is on fire, then you need to get out of your home. There's all kinds of triggers that happen physically in your body, and you get out and your life is saved. Praise the Lord, all is good. But there are other things that trigger us, right? Let's talk about them. Self-doubt is a trigger. Feeling of failure is a trigger. And you might not even actually cognizantly think to yourself, right now I'm feeling like a failure because of what she or he just said, but it just comes boom, lightning fast. The feeling of being out of control, losing control, or being vulnerable is a feeling that triggers us. Apprehension causes us to freeze, right? So we're talking a little bit, as Lisa already referenced, the three F's. We've talked about three T's, right? What are the three F's? Tell us, please.
Fight, flight, freeze.
The fight, flight, freeze, right? So apprehension causes us to freeze. Agitation causes us to fight. Alarm causes us to flee. Being sad or irritable, feeling like withdrawing, which we call stonewalling, panicking. Listen, I'm going through the whole list here, right? Anger, all of these things, when we feel them, they trigger something in us.
Yeah.
And I think everybody knows what we're talking about now.
I think everyone does, and stay with us. We're going somewhere, and it's going to help you. I think you could boil it down to a feeling of powerlessness, right? Like a sort of a loss of control in that moment that we react to. And I think also a real feeling of unmet expectations. You're feeling great, you're thinking one thing, and then shocked, it's something else. So that unmet expectations. I think that we've
I think, look, we wanted to talk about this honestly as long as we did, to really just kind of set the stage. Now let's get to work.
Yes.
Okay? So everybody understands at least a little bit what their triggers are. It's time to go a little bit deeper now. And that is the triggers and traps in our life. When you get triggered by any of these things that we've already talked about, it's because they're attacking something deeper. They're They're attacking in a base level. Now we're going to go to where some of us don't even want to consider a little bit. But do you remember when a few weeks ago we had a marriage retreat and we had Marian
Conference.
Gertz?
Yep.
Marriage conference, thank you. Marian Gertz shared with us, and she shared 3 words that were very important for every human being.
Yes.
Not just in the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? But a little bit higher than that. Do you remember what they were?
Yeah, she was basically saying that besides food, clothing, shelter, everybody needs
Here they are. Listen.
to feel accepted, to feel connected, and to be loved. You know, to feel accepted. I know you and I accept you for who you are. I'm not trying to change you. I feel I'm connected. You know, we all need to feel meaningfully connected in this world and not just be lost on our own and isolated, and loved. We all want to be loved. Loved just, I think she said, just loved just for breathing, not for anything that we do or anything tasks we perform or say, just for who we are, just loved. Which that's beautiful. That would be definitely, something that each person is in a lifelong pursuit for, I think, and wanting.
So going back to just what I was saying there, the triggers and traps in our life attack those 3 areas, or you could almost sum them up as one area, but they all get attacked when we get triggered. So your acceptance, your connection, and your love suffers some kind of attack, and so you get triggered, at least in your interpretation. You're interpreting that you are not accepted, you're interpreting that you are not connected, you're interpreting that you're not loved, and so boom, the explosion goes off, or click, the trap happens, and you're being held even against your will or smothered in some way.
There's a basic insecurity that we have, that we're not enough, or we're too much, we're not loved.
So let's get down to it and talk about the power of actually seeing your triggers, the power of actually identifying. This is the power of, I'd like to use the word admitting, actually having the courage and the integrity to admit, okay, that is a trigger for me. And what you'll find is that some of these things go back even before your spouse.
Yes.
You're going to encounter some things that set you off, but some things that are setting you off that your spouse is doing actually predate you ever knowing your spouse. There are issues there, right?
For sure.
So let's play a game with these
Well,
guys.
I think before we do that, I think we would just want to, I think we wanted to share that as we're a faith-based community talking about these issues, there is also a fear of just revealing to yourself or to others your triggers or any of the stuff that makes you feel at that level insecure. And as Christians, we really are blessed to know that at the end of the day, we can fall into the arms of a Father who loves us, who accepts us, who wants to be connected to us, who loves us unconditionally. And that's really the hard part, I think, as Christians, is to really, really understand that when things aren't going well in our marriage, we do have that to fall back on, which is very powerful. So
it's our great safety valve, right?
Yes.
So it's always this weird tension in our marriages. We want to work on being the best we can be, understanding that we'll never actually be perfect. And so this is where the grace of God always does come in, right?
Yes.
So that's super important.
Yeah, and so as you talk about our past experiences, our first caregivers may not have been perfect in those 3 areas, but we can rediscover as adults that God is and can heal a lot of that. And we're going to talk more about that in the following episodes, but right now we want to play a game to lighten things up.
The game is called?
We're going to play Trigger, No Trigger.
Trigger, No Trigger.
We're trying to help you identify your triggers tonight. That's the goal, the big idea, the goal of tonight is for you to find out what your triggers are.
All right, trigger, no trigger. Grab your phone, grab your keyboard, get ready to type. Here's what you need to put into the chat. Whether you get triggered by what we say or not triggered by what we say. Be honest. Don't twist it up. Don't lie. Just, if some of these examples that we give, do they trigger you? And we're going to see an interesting thing happen, we think, with those of us, our loyal marriage tribe that's here with us live.
Okay.
So trigger, no trigger. Get ready to play.
Here's the first trigger. Your spouse doesn't appreciate something you did for them. Is
Don't
that a
appreciate
trigger?
what?
Yes? No? Does that trigger you?
Your spouse doesn't appreciate.
Doesn't appreciate
so
something that you
something
did for them. They don't show appreciation.
How about cook a meal?
Yeah, yeah.
How about do the laundry?
Maybe something a little nicer than those things. Those
Oh.
are pretty basic, but
Anybody get triggered by this kind of stuff?
let's see. Triggered? Yes,
Yep,
yes,
yep.
yes.
Here we go. Boy, everybody's
Okay,
everybody's being
semi-trigger.
Semi-triggered.
Yeah, yeah,
All right.
yeah. So
Do you get triggered by that?
I don't get triggered by that.
So there's a no.
I don't as
There you
much,
go.
but because I'm used to it. No, I'm just kidding.
The truth comes out. Very good.
But you know, what if they forgot to do something for you? Okay, so you
So I
flip
said
that.
I was going to do it.
Flip that, yeah,
I said I was going to do it, but I didn't
and
do
they
it.
didn't do something. Is that a trigger for
Trigger,
you?
no trigger.
Trigger when
Trigger,
they don't
no,
do something
yes.
for you.
Not really. Okay, good. You know, I think you're going to see a lot as we go through. Well, actually, let me go to the next one after that. Thanks, everybody, for sharing. Look at that. There's some depends in there. Not there's actually depends.
Yeah, I
meaning
get it.
at Shoppers Drug
Yeah,
Mart depends,
yeah.
but there's a different kind of. Thank you, Aleth. Very good. So here's trigger or no trigger. Is everybody ready? Your spouse is driving too fast, in your opinion. Your spouse is driving too fast. Trigger or no trigger?
Well, what about your spouse's backseat driving?
Oh, that's a whole other one. That's a separate question.
Oh, we're going
That's
to
a
wait
separate
till all the
question.
answers come in? Okay.
So look at this. Not really.
Sherry doesn't mind when her husband...
Yeah, this is assuming we should have some. We
yeah,
don't
we
know
don't
what any
know.
more
We
questions
don't
they're
know which
answering,
one
but
they're answering.
Shannon, heavy trigger. There you go. Hazel,
Yes.
trigger.
Not applicable. I guess
My spouse doesn't drive.
she doesn't have a
All right.
license, maybe.
So
yeah.
now, Lisa, ask your second part of the question.
Okay, so...
Guys and girls, those of you who drive,
So what if
Backseat driver.
what if your spouse is trying to help you drive or criticizing the way you're driving? Is that
Trigger?
a trigger? Yes or no?
no trigger.
Oh, Jeff says huge trigger. Phil, 100%. Robert, I hope she's driving faster.
Yeah. He gets triggered when she drives too slow, right?
Okay. So what's the next one? How about your spouse is trying to control you? They want to control you in some way. Does that trigger you? Yes, no. Maybe they're trying to push you into doing something or buying something. Like, we should really buy this, honey. Like, let's do it. Let's buy it. And they're giving you all the reasons, but there's some pressure there. Does that trigger you?
So it's a little
Yes,
bit of
no.
a pushiness, right? Controlling, a
Controlling.
little bit of pushiness.
Yep.
Trigger for sure. So lots of people are triggered by
Okay,
this.
yes.
Can I just share this? Look, if you can type and kind of listen at the same time, here's something that you'll kind of notice a little bit. You notice how some people get triggered by some stuff and other people don't get triggered by it? It's the exact same stuff. Exact same stuff. And this is where I want you to think a little bit about, as you try to contemplate what triggers me, you'll notice that, and especially if what we get triggered about comes down to acceptance, connection,
Right.
and love,
Right.
maybe back in our past or maybe in our present, the reason we're getting triggered is because we're not feeling whatever. Connected, we're not feeling accepted, we're not feeling loved, we're not feeling safe. Whereas in other situations, other people feel completely safe or they feel completely connected when their spouse is pushing them. They don't feel threatened by it at all. So it's
Right.
really unique that we have, sometimes some of us get triggered by some stuff and it's just crazy explosion, and others are like, yeah, it's no big deal. No problem.
Yeah, I really think it depends on your experience with that from your past, or
Yep.
yeah.
So what other question?
What about if they're? What if your spouse? What if you're trying to talk to your spouse and about something, and they're stonewalling you? They don't want to talk. They aren't answering your questions. They just don't want to
Stonewalling,
have the discussion.
You know, we've talked about that. That's Gottman's famous one of the Gottman's famous 4 horsemen of the marriage, right? You can have
Right.
criticism, you can have defensive, you can have contempt, and you can have stonewalling. But stonewalling is also referred to as cold shoulder.
Cold shoulder, right?
Ice man, ice woman, that sort of thing. Everybody seems to get triggered by stonewalling.
Yeah. Very interesting.
Yes.
So
yes.
that's those 4 that you mentioned are huge in the areas of feeling loved, accepted.
Yep.
You know, they do not help a marriage. Criticism.
I've got one
so
for us. Trigger, no trigger, when you are accused of lying. Your spouse accuses you of lying or insinuates that you're lying. Trigger, no trigger. Let me change that.
I think that's a trigger for everybody,
not
isn't it?
Not accused of lying, but insinuates that they're lying.
Yeah.
What do you think? Trigger, no trigger?
Yes, also for, well, we don't know what they're answering, but.
Yeah, our game is we're way too fluid.
Well, what if
well, we can follow our moderator, right?
Right,
when you're
yes.
accused of lying.
So,
yeah.
what if your spouse is lying to you? Does that trigger you? That's pretty obvious that it does.
I would say yes to that. That triggers me.
Okay.
Good
I
thing
guess the first question was
don't lie, so that's good.
First question was if you're being accused of lying and you know you aren't lying.
Yeah.
I think sometimes people are lying, and when they're accused of lying, it's still a trigger, even though they know they're lying. You know what I'm saying?
Well, that is a defense mechanism used by liars, certainly, right?
Okay. Okay, let's do another one. How about when your spouse wants to tell you what you're thinking or feeling? You know, you're trying to express how you feel, and they're no. What you're feeling is this, or what you're thinking is this. Does that trigger you? Yes or no? Let's see.
Everybody must be getting tired of typing yes.
Yeah, it's true. And I think the point of not validating, I think that can be a real trigger when your spouse is not validating what you're thinking or feeling.
Here's what I'm going to do. We're going to stop. We're going to stop playing the game. Let's just wrap up with some other ideas here.
Okay.
So a lot of times we're just hitting on things that, I mean, we just randomly pick stuff that happens in marriages all the time, and we really do thank you for sharing the things that you're sharing here. But we get triggered when we're not validated. Everybody put a yes to that. We get triggered when our spouse patronizes us. Do you know what being patronizing is? Talk down to us, pat us on the head, don't take us seriously. We get triggered when our spouse is sarcastic with us. And there's fun sarcasm, yes, once in a while, but there is sarcasm that ruins marriages, in fact, absolutely. We get triggered when our spouse escalates their tone. Now listen to this. This is where most of us want to claim innocence all the time. You think about how many arguments you've had in your marriage when you go back and say, that's not what I said, that's not how I said it. And we become these angelic, innocent beings. But what our spouse heard, and in fact, let's be honest, the way we said it, the tone by which we said it, the volume by which we said it, the expression on our face and our body language was absolutely portraying either anger or contempt or something like that, and those kind of things trigger us. So listen, we're not telling you anything you don't know. We all get triggered, and we all get triggered by stuff like this. But let's notice, please, can I just say this? Let's notice here that you may have said, I get triggered in 5 of the things that we just talked about here. But if you look closely at your life, you look closely at what the real reason for what often triggers you, you'll notice that those 5 things usually disappear to fill in your name here. You are usually triggered by about one thing, and that causes fights, and that causes resentment, right?
Yeah.
So it's usually one thing.
Yeah.
But we say, well, I get triggered by this many things. But in actuality, it's really just 1 or 2 things.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. So, of course, we can say yes, 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 yes to everything that we've mentioned because we don't like it or it's not our preference. But what we're wanting you to really think about this week or after this episode is what really causes you to have an overreaction that's not healthy, not helping your marriage. And you may think, as Kevin said at the beginning, that it's a justified reaction. What they did, I'm justified in reacting like this. If it is a trigger and you're overreacting, it doesn't matter because it's not healthy for you. It's not good for your heart rate, for your blood pressure, for all of that, and it's not good for your marriage. It's not helping your spouse. And I think sometimes we think our triggers are all about our spouse, but really what we're suggesting tonight is your triggers are all about you.
Preach it, sister.
And you need to figure out what they are After we do that, then we can really dive into some of the training that we can. There's options. It's a reaction. It feels like it's automatic, but actually you do have a choice in how you react to your triggers.
I've got a way to describe this to everybody, and this is, we're actually, believe it or not, we're coming to the end, but we're at the most important part of this whole discussion. The whole title of this is, what is your trigger? Mm-hmm. What is your trigger? You are going to help your marriage if you can actually put your finger on, this is what triggers me. Why are you so angry? It's not because, well, I'm always angry. There's something more. It's not because, well, she makes me angry or he makes me angry. Why are you so morose? Why are you so, remember, we're talking about what sets you off, what causes an explosion that sends you either into fighting, right, or fleeing, or what's the other one?
Freezing.
Freezing, yeah. Right, hiding,
yeah.
And that whole Stonewall thing. So the question is, what is your trigger? And you've really got to be able to, this is our challenge, in the next few days, ponder this. What do I think it is for me? And this is some, like I said, this is some pull up your sleeves kind of work. Mm-hmm. This is big boy and big girl pants that you have to put on here, because you've really got to look and say, this is who I am. These are the core base of my insecurities. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. When I feel this, I kind of snap. And if we could really figure that stuff out, and this is our challenge, we're not even tonight going to give any answers to what your trigger is. Not yet. That's the next episode.
You have to come back.
Really, because we are people who live in a society that we don't know how anything works, and we don't care. We just want things to work. And even tonight, you might be saying, just give me the answers. I see that I get triggered. Tell me how to stop it. That's just not the way it works with human beings. I have in my hand a phone. I have no idea how it works. I couldn't make it, and I don't care to know how it works. All I care is that it works. And that's the way we all live. But that's not the way human beings are. It's not the way you are. You can't just say, fix me, without knowing what your problem is. Mm-hmm. So you have to pause now. You got to think a little bit about triggers and traps. Ponder a little bit about, do I have them? I sure hope you're answering yes to that question of, do I have them? If you don't,
you will. You haven't lived enough life, probably.
You got some bigger marriage problems than that. Everybody's got them, right? So what is your trigger? What really sets you off? What causes your explosion? And we think that a lot of times it's going to be found in those three words about acceptance, connection, and love.
And what threatens those three words.
And what threatens those. So, yeah, my trigger is driving. And all the road rage that many of you have experienced, I want to challenge you to really think deeper. Is it really road rage? I mean, is it really driving? And for some of you, you're like, no, it's absolutely driving. It's just the other people. But there's a problem there, right? Or, for example, in your relationship with your spouse. So you see where I'm going here a little bit. You've got to take the time and the courage to really look and say, what is my trigger?
Yeah, and if you're looking for it, if you are intending on finding it, you will see it, because, as we said earlier, the body reactions will tell you, oh, this might be a trigger, because I'm feeling really heated right now and angry and like shutting down or lashing out. There's all kinds of ways that triggers react. And those will tell you, those will be the clues that will help you to know what they are. Be curious about it and really get to know them and befriend them in a way, I would say, so that it's not so scary to really admit to yourself and again, we're not working on our spouse, we're working on ourselves.
Oh, we're
and
what now?
We're not working on our spouse or hoping our spouse is hearing this. We're working on ourselves and what our triggers are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in all of this, it's so important to experience the power of really recognizing, identifying. Love that word you used at the start. you remember the word you used at the start? With us.
Naming? No.
We are fully integrated.
Oh, integrated. Know yourself. Know yourself.
Yeah,
Yes.
so that's the
all
power.
all parts of you unified together.
That's the power of really knowing your triggers. So in a few weeks, or in our next episode, when we come back, what we want to do is make an attempt to really bring answers to your triggers. But it's not going to do you any good if you're back here at the
You
next
don't know what they
episode
are.
and you don't really
Yeah,
understand
yeah.
what your trigger is. It's not going to do you any good to even take that to the Lord searching for answers if you don't know what are the answers, not what are the answers you need, but what's my issue.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah. And then in following episodes, we're going to talk about helping your spouse with their triggers as well. We'll get to that. As we talked about in our book, Stay Home Marriage, this power of revealing, of knowing your spouse, knowing yourself, knowing your spouse, knowing God, it all works together. And it's very exciting. It is scary if you don't like vulnerability, but if you get feeling safer in your life, you will grow to want vulnerability because that means you're closer, you're more intimate, and intimacy can be scary too, but those things will give you the marriage that you're wanting.
Yeah.
And if you want if you want to see or purchase our book, I think it's in this episode. There's a link there for that. So, and their next episode is April 12th. So please come back April 12th, and we're going to continue on this very important topic that we're talking about, knowing your triggers.
Yeah, so when you think about all of this stuff and consider all of this stuff, the big ask, this is a year later. For some of you, you've been with us for a year. I don't want to assume that you've been working on your marriage like there's been something bad in your marriage, but you've been faithfully with us for a year. But you know what we think a year into this is one of the most important things that you could do. You've got issues in your marriage. You got little frustrations with each other. You're not on the same page with each other. So often it's because of these triggers and traps. And you can't get the answers to them until you do some soul searching and start to identify, what is it? I know the things that trigger me, but what's behind the things that trigger me?
Yes,
So ask
yes.
yourself, is it all about those three, right? Am I being triggered because I don't feel accepted? Am I being triggered because I don't feel connected? Or am I being triggered because I don't feel loved? So we'll see you all back here April 12th.
Yes.
And we're going to try to get some answers to the triggers that we all understand and come up with in the next few days. Thanks for
Sounds
being with
good.
us. 1 year later, God bless you all. Join us next time.
Thanks, guys. Good night.